That's right. Over 41,000 dead in Paris, hundreds dead in New York, and across America, many cities, the same issue. Australia, 143 dead that we know about so far. All those figures have just given you are true. The only sort of thing I ought to explain is all of this occurred in the 1911 heat wave, 112 years ago, and when conditions were so bad and there wasn't air conditioning, etc. then. In Paris, of those 41,000 deaths, a lot were young babies. They just couldn't help them, and they died in their droves, as it were. So heat waves are not uncommon. What's disturbing me is the complete alarmism of the heatwave mania we're having on the news, including my favourite channel, GB News. I almost could not stand to watch the news because they're saying it's climate change, blah, blah, blah. Well, yes, it is in the sense because there's always been the climate change and we have warmed since the Little Ice Age. But in 1911, the CO2 levels were very, very low, much lower than everyone could wish for in the alarmist industry. So it couldn't have been CO2 then. And of course, the truth is there's been these heat waves throughout time. And of course, you're being told that today's heat waves are much hotter than the past. And of course the reason for that is that they fiddle the temperatures. They quote temperatures like Heathrow as a record for the UK. That thermometer is on the runway. Look at this animation. Beside one of the runways in Heathrow Airport, would you? But that's exactly what they've done. They've taken the record temperature from this station at Heathrow, with all the jets not just taking off and landing, but also taxiing and turning so the jets go right onto it. It is unbelievable. This climate station is right in the middle of the urban heat island effect. It's in the middle basically of a city, and the whole area is subject to a much higher temperature than the surroundings. London itself is claimed to be 10 degrees warmer than the outside countryside areas. And besides the aircraft, there are of course all the vehicles buzzing around the airport all the time. You couldn't put a temperature station in a worse place than that if you want to measure the ambient temperature of the Earth at a particular point. And if it's not Heathrow, it's Coningsby, which happens to be an RAF airport with aircraft on it. Again, totally unacceptable as a measuring point. As I have pointed out so many times, climate is not weather. When they come on television with a record that day, that week, or even a drought that year, that by itself is weather. It is not climate. Climate is weather, as I repeat, over a long term, so you can see the pattern. Now here is a pattern of maximum temperatures in the USA. You have the 1911 heat wave. That was a heat wave. It lasted a long time. Still weather. Look at this area here. That's the 1930s, the Dust Bowl time. But look at the trend here, that red line, and how the maximum temperatures in America, right up to today, if you like, have decreased and decreased and decreased. So the climate is saying hot weather is getting less and less extreme. The exact opposite of what you're being told. And don't forget, the 2011 and the 2031, for that matter, were not just in America, they were worldwide. So all this raises the question, how come we're being told different? How come the alarmists claim the data is different? Well, really it's quite simple. Now NOAA are like the best way to describe them would be the Met Office of the USA. They actually measure with balloons, the troposphere, that's the part of the atmosphere we're living in. So they measure it, and they come up with temperature figures over time. Now in this studies period, from 1958 to 2010, quite a long time, there was a 0.2 degrees C warming. But NOAA changed that reading to 0.8 C warming, 4 times the amount of heating. How do they manage this? Well, the recorded line is the orange line, and the blue line is the adjusted line. What they have done is they have lowered the temperatures of the past, so the oranges come down to the blue, and they've heightened the temperatures of the current so that you get a much steeper slope that suits their agenda. It's absolutely incredible. But they've actually done this to nearly all temperatures in the world. It's called homogenizing. It's unbelievable, and it's the biggest fiddle there's ever been. So you're not being quoted what was read in thermometers way back. You're being quoted adjusted figures all the time. Let's look at just how much the adjustments were. So this is the NOAA adjustment graph. So below this blue line, it's negative values. So you look up the year and you reduce the temperature reading by that amount. When it's above the blue line, you add to the temperature by that amount. Now, what's interesting here is if you take where there is no adjustment at all, it's 1998. Wow! By sheer coincidence, of course, that's the year the infamous hockey stick graph was launched. That was the start of the global warming scare in modern times. This is ridiculous. Adding to current temperatures and taking away from past temperatures steepens the curve. It creates the hockey stick. It conforms to the agenda. It's absurdity in the extreme. But it's how they do it. I cannot help feeling that today the globalists, the WEF, the UN, IPCC, all these international organizations are trying to control the population and treating us like sheep. Here you have the shepherd, and around them the dogs. 15-minute cities, climate alarmism, no ice cars, reduce food, restrict travel, ration energy, digital currency, lockdowns, and more. The most important thing is to be aware of how society is being shepherded like this. The most important thing is to understand this agenda is not good for you. This agenda is right throughout the West. Most of the mainstream media support it. They carry on the journalism. Well, it's not called journalism because they don't do real journalism. They just repeat the propaganda. Not all. And there are signs that's beginning to crack, which is good. But the mainstream media and governments are blindfolded going for net zero. And really what they're going for is all of these factors shepherding you, the public, into a terrible, terrible situation. You won't be basically having cars, most people. You won't be allowed to travel. You'll be very restricted, even leaving your home in a car. Well, you won't have a car. It's an impossible situation. Nobody's doing the maths. It can't work out. The only way it can work out is to strip people of property and achieve the WEF vision of nobody owning anything by 2030, but being happier. George Orwell put it so well. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. Not a truer word could be spoken about the way they are fiddling and distorting climate change and using it for political purposes.